part of the IOM Radio Network.
IPMNation.com.
Tonight on Unleashed, I'm joined by liberty activist, also known as the illegal Uber driver, Christopher David. That should be a very interesting discussion. And, of course, we'll get caught up on everything that we've missed in the world of politics over the last week since our last actual live show. That should take about a minute and a half. Really not much other than, Trump insulting people and whatnot. The usual. It's Tuesday, December 29th, 2015, just after 11 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone. Matt Connarton Unleashed starts right now.
Auto sequence starts. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, everybody. Welcome. It's Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live on the air. It's our first actual, truly live show in 6 days. So welcome. We're live on, of course, IPM Nation 1 and the new OTR FM, streaming worldwide from the Uptown Auto Repair Studio in Manchester, New Hampshire. And so we have a great guest who's going to be joining us in just a couple minutes in the second segment, Christopher David, who some of my listeners will already be familiar with, and some of you, this will be new to you. He's a liberty activist. He's also known as the illegal Uber driver, or one of them at least. Christopher, who has been on featured quite a bit on Free Talk Live, which is a show that I'm sure some of my listeners also listen to. So we're going to be talking to him in a few minutes, and that's he's a very interesting guy with a very interesting story. I've never actually spoken with him before, so I'm looking forward to kind of interviewing him tonight and finding out where he is in the whole process of his entanglements with the police in Portsmouth, New Hampshire over Uber. And he's got a new thing, which I just learned about tonight, when Jen shared the article from freekeen.com, which I think is very interesting too. So really looking forward to talking with him. So we'll be bringing him in via Skype in just a few minutes. Let's see. Also, just a couple quick programming notes. So we're back to being live every weeknight at 11 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation 1. And, of course, we continue to be live also on OTR FM on Tuesdays and Thursday nights. So we did have a little bit of a break as far as live shows. There will not be, however, a live television edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed this week, but that will return next week. But other than that, it's business as usual, and we'll be on New Year's Eve at regular time and New Year's night and all that good stuff. So thank you to everybody who continues to listen to and support the show, and hopefully you'll continue to do so into 2016 because it's almost 2016 now. Let's see. As far as political news that has happened since our last live excursion together, really not a whole lot. George Pataki, former governor of New York, dropped out of his race. Dropped out of his race. He's no longer white. No, dropped out of the race for the Republican nomination. I don't know how many of you actually knew that Governor George Pataki was even running for president. He never made it to the main stage in the Republican debates. He was always relegated to the kids' table. I remember, I think it was Thanksgiving of last year. I was at the home of a gentleman who's been on the show many times, friend of the show, George Lambert, and found out from a friend of his that Pataki was running. That was where I first heard that George Pataki was running for president, and then I really didn't hear much about it after that because no one really paid much attention to him. Boy, talk about a guy who missed his window. So he's out. Let's see. Lemmy from Motorhead passed away. That's something that just happened yesterday, I think was when it was officially announced. That one, it was kind of weird because I think it was just a few months ago, I had shared on Facebook an article from The Onion saying something about Lemmy, Lemmy's currently on tour, but he doesn't know he's dead or something. I can't do it justice. It was actually very funny at the time. Doesn't seem quite so funny now that he's actually dead. But at the time, it was funny. I thought it was funny. Basically, my policy with The Onion is if I see an article pop up that actually makes me laugh out loud, I go ahead and click share. With one exception. There was one that actually made me laugh out loud that I actually didn't click share because I just thought it might have been too offensive. And for me to show that kind of restraint is unusual, but I just thought it was too offensive to share out. And maybe someday I'll tell you all what that one was, but I'm genuinely afraid of what people will think of me if they know that I laughed at this particular Onion article. So I won't tell you what that is quite yet. I got to work up to that. By the way, we do have a phone line open tonight. If you would like to call in or text, you can also text, particularly if you have anything for our guest who will be joining us in the next segment, Christopher David. If you have a question or a comment or anything for him, that number is 617-417-4IPM. That's IPM as in IPM Nation. Or if you prefer, 617-417-4476. So you can call us on that line, or if you're feeling a little shy and you'd rather send a text, you can do that too. Although I would love to hear your voice. But, in this age, I don't know, I wonder if this has affected talk radio. I've actually never thought about this before, but we live in an age where a lot of people just literally don't want to talk on the phone anymore at all, ever. They just want to text everything. And I wonder if that has affected, I got to look that up after the show tonight. If anyone's done any kind of a study on how that's affected talk radio, because not all, but most talk radio shows take phone calls from listeners. And I wonder if fewer people statistically are calling into talk radio shows because fewer people actually are interested in having any kind of phone conversation whatsoever. An actual verbal, using your voice phone conversation as opposed to just texting. I don't know. But we can do it either way. You can call or text at that number. By the way, we also have a chat room at ipmnation.com/live1. So feel free to enter the chat room and you can communicate that way. And we have our, also, of course, links to our Twitter and Facebook. You can tweet me during the show or anytime at Matt Connarton. And, of course, you can post on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. Please like the page if you haven't done so already. And not only that, but also the pages for IPM Nation. We would appreciate that. And, of course, OMTimes Radio. We are also on Tuesdays and Thursday nights on OTR FM, the premium channel on OMTimes Radio. Also, by the way, I saw something interesting on HuffPost. Maybe we'll come back to this at the end of the show. But HuffPost published, as I think they do every year, I think this is an annual year-end tradition, the statistics on how many people have fatally overdosed on marijuana over the last year. And this is stunning, but there seems to be a trend as far as marijuana overdoses. Year after year, the number is exactly the same, and it continues to remain 0. No one, now, 2015 isn't quite over. It's only the 29th. There's still time for someone to find some way to break the trend and to be the first person to overdose on marijuana. I'm not hoping or wishing for that. I don't wish for anyone to have any kind of an overdose. But it would be interesting, wouldn't it? Just to see if it were actually possible, which I'm pretty sure it's not. But there's still time for someone to prove us all wrong. But this year, the number of marijuana overdoses so far still remains 0. In fact, I'll read a little bit of this to you quickly from HuffPost. With marijuana now legal in some form throughout 23 states, the number of Americans who fatally overdosed on the drug last year was significant. The rate of absolutely zero deaths from a marijuana overdose remained steady from last year, according to figures released this month by the Centers for Disease Control. But while Americans aren't dying as a result of marijuana overdoses, the same can't be said for a range of other substances, both legal and illicit. For example, a total of 17,465 people died from overdosing on illicit drugs like heroin and cocaine last year, while 25,760 people died from overdosing on prescription drugs, including painkillers and tranquilizers like Valium, according to CDC figures. Opioid overdose levels rose so sharply in 2014, spiking 14% from the previous year, the CDC described the levels as epidemic. There's more to this article, but basically the point is, if you want to kill yourself with prescription drugs, well, that's just fine as far as the United States government's concerned, because, the pharmaceutical lobby, obviously very powerful in Washington, D.C., and they want to make sure that you continue to use these things that you run the risk of overdosing on. On the other hand, a plant that grows in nature, in most states, the government's not directly involved in that in any way. So you don't, as an adult, you don't get to make your own decisions about whether or not to use that. That's the country we live in. But it is changing. All right, when we come back, we'll have Christopher David with us. Don't go away. More Unleashed coming up. Stay with me.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hi, this is Angela Levesque, host of Entanglement Radio. Join me Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern for inspiring conversations with visionaries in spiritual science and conscious healing. Entanglement Radio, Wednesdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. Transcendent talk for the conscious mind.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Hello. Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton, Unleashed. We're live on IPM Nation 1 and OTR FM. And now joining us via Skype is liberty activist and the illegal Uber driver, Christopher David. Christopher, how are you, sir?
Quite good, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's good to have you on. I'm excited to talk to you. I've heard you many times on Free Talk Live calling into the show, and I've been following through that and through, just looking at things online, what's been going on with you. But for our listeners who aren't up to speed, we'll kind of go through the history, and then I want to end up in the present day where you've got something really cool that I just learned about tonight that you're doing in terms of New Year's Eve in Portsmouth. But so you're an Uber driver, or you were an Uber driver. You're kind of taking a break from that, right? For legal reasons.
Yeah. Former Uber driver, drove through the fall, even through the new transportation ordinance passed by the Portsmouth City Council that made Uber drivers illegal in Portsmouth unless you jump through their hoops that most people just can't do. Like most people cannot afford to purchase their own commercial insurance policy, this kind of thing. So a number of drivers continued driving as we had in the months before this ordinance went into effect. And this ordinance has really created a turf war on the streets of Portsmouth. On the eve of the ordinance going into effect, one of the owners of one of the largest taxi companies was interviewed by our local newspaper and said that he's going to direct his cabs to patrol the streets of Portsmouth for rogue Uber drivers and report them to the police. And this was kind of shocking to me. So that's what inspired me to create this free Uber campaign, trying to organize drivers and supporters to, number one, educate people that the fact that Uber is now illegal in Portsmouth, which is kind of scandalous enough. But now you have these, brown shirt taxi people going around, starting stuff with Uber drivers. And that actually happened to me when I was picking up a customer one night on a Friday night. I had this incident where I had this bouncer, a taxi driver, and a police officer all within a span of 5 minutes try to stop me through a combination of verbal warnings or yelling at me, or the taxi person blocked my vehicle in, not trying to stop me from picking up this customer. Well, I have an audio recorder device going on in my car during rides. So I posted the audio of this into a YouTube video online. Didn't use anybody's names or faces or anything, but put subtitles on there and spread that around, just kind of as an example to people of how bad it has become on the streets of Portsmouth. Got a call from a police officer a few weeks later, actually, coincidentally or not, the same officer from that video, who informed me that the bouncer had filed a criminal complaint against me. The bouncer, who is, no surprise, also a part-time taxi driver by day, filed a criminal complaint against me for the charge felony wiretapping because I illegally recorded him, whatever. So the officer said he would call me back once the warrant was completed. He called me back the following week or so to inform me that he had completed the warrant for my arrest and asking me to come to turn myself in, which I didn't really want to do because, at least not at that time, because my fiance was days away, or we didn't know how many days away from giving birth to our son. They ended up sending cops to our door to arrest me when I was out buying supplies. So kind of after that, went to turn myself in, was released relatively quickly on personal recognizance bail. And my court date actually is scheduled for January 4th. So since then, my lawyers advised me to not, drive for Uber to make sure I don't violate certain provisions of my bail. But it's further motivated me to make sure that Uber, not just Uber, but ride sharing in general, is, I don't want to even say legalized. I just want to say not punished by these bureaucrats who are trying to shackle us with red tape and dance to their tune. The private, economic, voluntary interactions of two consenting adults is really no one's business. So that's kind of one of the points that we're trying to get out there.
Absolutely. And this is something too that just from looking around online, there's been things like this going on in other cities too, where Uber drivers are having to really kind of fight this battle. But you're really in the thick of it. And tell us what you've got going on New Year's Eve in Portsmouth.
So we were also inspired by this same taxi cab owner. An article came out where he was threatening to pull his cabs out from Portsmouth to Dover, the next town over, on New Year's Eve, to kind of make the point about they don't think that the cops are enforcing this ordinance enough. Right. And they actually already did that on Thanksgiving Eve. They, the largest taxi cab company, got a number of other taxi companies to pull their cabs out to Dover for a night. And then, this mountain of complaints, all the way around about, Uber's surge pricing and whatever. And then he then tried to use that to pressure the city council into enforcing this more. So we said, okay, great. Well, at least this time he's giving us some advance warning. So, initially I kind of put it out to the group of Uber drivers that we've been, organizing together. Hey guys, let's make sure that we are available on New Year's Eve. It looks like, they might be monkeying with the supply and demand again to try to make a point. And then kind of had the further idea like, hey, we should actually see about just offering people free rides or rides on a donation basis, not Uber rides. Uber, there's a number of the drivers, some of them are still driving in Portsmouth despite the illegality of it. Other drivers kind of got scared off and they're just, it's not worth the risk to them and they're driving in neighboring cities. But kind of figured out, if we take donation rides or free rides to people, then it's not commercial activity and is not subject to the transportation ordinance. So kind of had the idea of like, look, let's just get a group of drivers together who are willing to provide rides to people for free in Portsmouth on New Year's Eve, just to ensure that there's that extra option for people to get home safely. So we put that out into a press release, which got picked up today by the Associated Press and picked up by newspapers all over the country about this donation thing. The other kind of interesting angle about it is that I had been kind of kicking around the idea of launching a mobile app, kind of a competitor to Uber. Been kind of toying with this idea for a few months now. I'm an app developer, web developer, and I've been kind of tinkering on other apps and things, and this New Year's Eve situation got me thinking, this would actually be kind of the perfect time to launch at least a very basic version of this app. So we've kind of created this new effort called Arcade City, which is it's going to be a decentralized version of Uber, eventually integrating blockchain technology like Ethereum. But for now, it's a website, and as of next week, it will be a mobile app where people can download and they can request a ride, one of these free rides. We got other things planned with it that I can talk about, but the basic thrust of New Year's Eve is we're giving free rides to people, or if people want to leave us a $20 bill or whatever, that's fine. But just to make sure that people are able to get home safely in Portsmouth and they're not continually the victim of these taxi and bureaucrats colluding to deny choices to consumers.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Now, but now you're running into opposition to this, right? Because I was reading in this Free Keen article. Now the police are saying, well, you can't really do this either, which is strange in a way because, you would think that they would want people to be able to get home safely on New Year's Eve. So they're it's kind of a mixed message coming from the police.
Yeah, it's interesting. So our initial promotion of this was that it would be, we're offering free or donation-based rides. And the deputy police chief, Warshaw, or something like that, said that, if you're even taking donations, that's regulated by the ordinance. You'd have to be giving completely free rides for it to not be regulated by the ordinance. So it's like, okay, well then they're free rides. It was just kind of like, there's all this gray area, like where the line is at, that's continually shifting. And it's like, these are conversations that shouldn't even be had. This should be ideally like what Sarasota County and Collier County have done in Florida, where, they spent months fighting against Uber and the regulations, and, over $100,000 in tickets and fines were allocated to Uber drivers. And they eventually decided, like, we're just not able to enforce this. And so both of those counties in the past couple of months deregulated transportation services entirely. Not only are they not regulating ride shares, they also unshackled the taxis, who have had to deal with, all sorts of their own licensing and background checks and stuff. And they said that, the free market is going to have to determine how important background checks are versus any of these other safety processes, which is exactly what a government should do, is just get out of the way and let people innovate. So we've been trying to persuade the city council of this. Fortunately, there's a new city council that gets seated in early January that has some younger people on it. We hope that they'll be more friendly to these types of arguments. But the last city council, I mean, Uber came forward with 3 amendments to this ordinance that they requested, very minor changes, and the city council shot them all down and just kind of has not been very good about cooperating with Uber. It's unfortunate, and it's something where I'm not necessarily going to champion Uber's cause. I see an opportunity to even build something separate and better than Uber, a little bit more decentralized, a little bit more just kind of connecting people peer to peer. So we're excited to use this as a kind of a launching point for that app, which is going to be called Arcade City.
I think it's a great idea, and congratulations on that. And well, listen, Christopher, we're already about out of time, but I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. And I do want to have you back on in the new year to find out how New Year's Eve went for you, and to really keep up on everything that's happening with you. And I commend what you're doing. I think it's great.
Great. Definitely. Matt, thank you.
Absolutely. Christopher, thank you. Take care. All right. And the rest of you, more Unleashed coming up. Don't go away. We're live.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Matt Connarton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connarton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connarton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
The name is Bond. James Bond.
No, the name is Joe. The Joe Show. And we are returning back for our 9th season here on OMTimes Radio. So tune in every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on OMTimes.com/mobile. You can take us wherever you go. Yeah!
As difficult as it is to believe, there are places in Africa where human traffickers sell albino children and their body parts for use in magic rituals. Humanity Healing International is actively working in Uganda to change this paradigm. The Albino Rescue Project finds albino children who are at risk and places them in safe schools and environments where they can learn and grow free from fear. To learn more or to sponsor a child, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live. The date is Tuesday, December 29th. It's almost 2016. And if you're joining us late, I did mention at the top of the show, we will be live. We are live 5 nights a week on IPM Nation 1, Monday through Friday at 11 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, every Tuesday and Thursday night, we have the honor and privilege of also being carried on OTR FM. And this week, we did take off Christmas Eve, and I posted something I posted a short thing on Christmas Eve and whatnot on just on IPM Nation. But as far as this week goes and going forward, we'll just be live straight through. New Year's Eve will be on live as normal. New Year's Day night we'll be on. So other than that, the schedule will continue unabated. There is no, however, television edition of Matt Connarton Unleashed. That will return next week. So that means that even Wednesday night will be on live, because usually on Wednesday we do the television edition at 2 p.m. And then we use the audio from that for our Wednesday night broadcast of the radio edition. We kind of cheat a little bit on Wednesdays, but this week there is no television edition. So this week I will even be live on Wednesday night, tomorrow night. So wait, what day is it? Yeah. Wait, is it Monday or Tuesday? No, it's Tuesday. Wow. I see the holidays have me all messed up as far as what day it is, because everything's different this week. Everything's different. So let's see. I was talking at the top of the show, just kind of getting caught up on what we missed in terms of politics. And I want to kind of go back to that. When I say what we missed, I just mean, just kind of we'll just kind of touch on little things that happened. I mean, basically, as far as the presidential race, aside from George Pataki dropping out, and he was a non-factor anyway, nothing has really changed. It does seem like we're already very much in the general election phase. And here's what I mean by that. Right now, most of the dialogue, I shouldn't say most, but a lot of the dialogue that's going on from the candidates is Trump and Hillary kind of fighting back and forth, and with rhetoric, of course. And what's interesting about that is I'm trying to remember, where have we seen a presidential election where it's already sort of become that this early? We haven't even hit the New Hampshire primary yet. Now it's in February this time around, early February. But it already seems like we're in some ways, a general election presidential campaign where you have Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton facing Republican nominee Donald Trump, because they're sniping at each other quite a bit via rhetoric. Now, I had posted something on the Unleashed page that I'm doing this sort of, I'm not being necessarily completely serious with this, but I had said the other night that I'm revising. It was in light of another thing that Trump had said, that I'm now revising once again my percentages in terms of what I think the likelihood is that Trump is actually a secret plant by the Clintons, that he made some sort of secret deal. And I revised that to now, I believe that it's 82%. I'm 82% certain that his campaign is legitimate, and 18% open to the possibility that he made some sort of secret deal with the Clintons. Trump, the latest thing that caused me to say that was Trump calling into question Bill Clinton and his sexism, to use Trump's term. And this, of course, this comment comes from the same guy who previously had made fun of Hillary taking a little longer in the bathroom with the bathroom breaks during the debates than her male competitors. And then he turns around and he's talking about Bill Clinton's sexism. Now, I've often said that I think politicians are generally the least self-aware human beings on Earth. They just you'll see politicians so often will say and do things where you just go, wow, does this individual really not get why that's not smart? You see that all the time. But but Trump has really kind of, he's like the ultimate in not self-aware. You know, when he says very sexist things about Hillary Clinton and then calls out her husband on his sexism, that seems to denote a certain lack of self-awareness, which may just mean that he's really successfully adapting to being a politician with his lack of self-awareness. But I have to tell you, it's so strange watching him. I get it that the more outlandish and incendiary he gets, the better he does in the polls. But he cannot be, I mean, he's not a dumb guy, clearly. He can't be oblivious to the fact that he is in a position where I don't think he can be prevented at this point from winning the Republican nomination. And then he can't possibly go on to win the general election. You know, he really is right before our eyes, whether he's intending to or not. And I'm about 18% open to the possibility that he's intending to. He is handing the presidency to Hillary Clinton. You know, the conservative base of the Republican Party loves a lot of what Trump says and does, but then you've got a lot of Republicans who don't love it and who are, some of them probably going to stay home on election day, because you always hear about this phenomenon, people who are disenchanted with their party's nominee, so they just decide to sit it out on election day, which of course is incredibly self-defeating and foolish. You know, on the one hand, you know, you don't want to have to vote for the lesser of two evils necessarily, but at the same time, if you really believe, you know, if you're a Republican and you really believe that Hillary is the devil, then you probably want to vote for Trump even as much as you might not like him. Just like, you know, if you're a Bernie supporter and you're mad at Hillary for being the nominee because you wanted Bernie, you know, and you're mad about that, it would be the same thing as if you decided to sit it out and not care if Trump gets elected, if you think Trump is the devil, you know. So now, me personally, I try to support independence. You know, I've endorsed Darryl W. Perry, who still has to win the Libertarian nomination, but last time around I voted for Gary Johnson, because rather than voting for the lesser of two evils, I try to find someone who I don't think is fundamentally evil at all. So I go third party where possible. But the odd thing too is about that is I've actually been saying this for years now, that as much as Republicans loathe Hillary Clinton, and they do, Republicans just hate her on a cellular level, with an intensity that is I don't know if I've often seen much. I mean, I think some of them hate her more than Obama. And they really hate Obama. They don't even, I mean, a lot of Republicans still, if you look at polls, don't even think he's a United States citizen. Still, I mean, that's how much they hate him. But I call it the Hillary paradox. Republicans loathe her, and yet, if you are a Republican, if you're, you know, your typical mainstream conservative Republican, and you do get stuck with a Democrat in the White House, Hillary is probably the Democrat you want, because she's not a liberal. Her economic policy clearly is not that of a liberal. It's more of a centrist, and some liberals actually deride her husband's fiscal policy as having been right of center, and actually blame Bill Clinton for, you know, a lot of the deregulation of the banks and such. And a lot of that's over my head, so I don't get too into that. I don't really, that's not my area of expertise to comment on, but I do know that a lot of liberals will tell you that Bill Clinton was no liberal and Hillary Clinton is no liberal. And I mean, she certainly is no liberal in terms of foreign policy. That's for sure. So if you're going to get stuck with a Democrat, Hillary's probably the one you want, but Republicans they just hate her so much. I don't think they can see that. So they'll, a lot of Republicans will sit it out anyway, though, if they're really not happy with Trump. So I think no matter what, Hillary's going to end up winning the general election. I really do. But so that just continues. But we seem to be in the general election phase. I mean, Rubio, I keep seeing this stuff that suggests that Rubio has some momentum, but then, he's still not doing that well. He's still nowhere near Trump. Jeb still, no matter what he does, Jeb did, I thought, very well in that last debate. I thought he did better than Trump, and it mattered not at all. It didn't move the numbers at all, really. Might have moved his numbers up a little bit, but it certainly didn't hurt Trump. No matter what Trump does, he's just, God, one poll showed him with a 40% lead over the rest of the pack. A 40% lead. So it's like we're already there, and I can't think of when we've already been in the general election phase. At least it sure feels like it. I can't think of another instance where we've been in the general election phase before we've even hit the New Hampshire primary. But I feel like we're there, and it's Trump versus Hillary. Amazing. It's very interesting. Probably not particularly healthy. All right, we got to take one more very quick break. We'll be right back. More Unleashed. Don't go away.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Hello, I'm Miriam Knight of New Consciousness Review, inviting you to my new show where I interview the rising stars of the conscious awakening. We'll explore the many faces of consciousness in action and intriguing perspectives on life, the universe, and everything in between. Join us each Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on the Rising Stars Show.
This is Terry Van Horn, and I want to invite you to join me for my weekly radio show, Healing Light, on OMTimes Radio, every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On Healing Light, we want to bring love, light, and blessings into your world. You can find out more about us at www.healinglightonline.com. Blessings.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Welcome back, Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live on this Tuesday night on IPM Nation and OTR FM. Thank you again, by the way, to Christopher David, our guest. I sincerely do want to have him back, as I said, after the New Year to see how it went for him on New Year's Eve with the new app and whatnot with the situation in Portsmouth. There is actually, if you just search Go online and Google Christopher David Uber or Christopher David Liberty Activist. So, he'll come right up. And he's gotten a lot of press coverage for what's been going on with him. And, I really hope that illegal wiretapping charge that he has to fight is just ridiculous. I mean, that was in a public place. There's no expectation of privacy out in front of a bar. That's frustrating. I mean, that's just government trying to push somebody around. It's pretty disgusting. I saw this on HuffPost that I thought was kind of funny. I haven't pre-read this. I'm just gonna see. It says Fox News panel on women voters is 3 old white dudes. One panelist took issue with the very notion that women share interests when they walk into the voting booth. This was written by Gabriel Arena. Let me read this. Fox News assembled a panel Tuesday to talk about Donald Trump's problem with women voters, a panel composed entirely of old white dudes, pointing out that women will make up 54% of the electorate come November. Happening Now host Greg Jarrett announced the results of a recent poll showing only 30% of Trump supporters are women. He asked panelists Douglas Schoen, a former advisor to President Bill Clinton, and conservative columnist Cal Thomas, quote, "Do you think some of his verbal attacks on women have cost him among women?" Thomas took issue with the very notion that women share interests when they walk into the voting booth. Thomas said, quote, "One of the things that concerns me is this talk about women's issues as if women are a monolith, as if they all think alike or should think alike. Women care about basically the same things men care about, healthcare, the economy, and the rest," unquote. It's no doubt true that women voters share concerns with the broader electorate, but it's also true that some issues are of particular salience to women in a society where they are paid less than men and have a harder time accessing healthcare and childcare than their counterparts in other countries. Had Fox News bothered to include a woman on the panel, she might have pointed that out. And that's something, by the way, that I think, I was talking earlier about how professional politicians often lack self-awareness. I think that in some instances, that's also true of Fox News. Also, too, one more thing we'll hit quickly. Says here, Texas begs the Supreme Court not to touch Obama's immigration appeal. This is interesting to me because, as longtime listeners know, immigration is an issue that I feel very strongly about in terms of, let's not be deporting millions of people or even talking about it because it's ridiculous and I think it's wrong and it's immoral and I think it's never going to happen. You're never going to deport 11 million people anyway, so what's the point? Let's see what this says. While as many as 5.2 million undocumented immigrants in the U.S. continue to await a final decision on deportation relief, Texas on Tuesday opposed an appeal from the Obama administration that could put the president's executive actions on immigration before the Supreme Court. Complying with a deadline the court set earlier this month, Texas aimed to keep its prior victories in place and urged the justices not to take the case, arguing that the initial court order preventing the programs from moving forward, plus an appeals decision affirming it, quote, was necessary to uphold the separation of powers and ensure the proper functioning of the administrative state, unquote. Yeah, I mean, in other words, so, they're challenging Obama's executive order on this. Of course, none of these people, when I would assume, when Reagan issued executive orders on immigration or when George H.W. Bush did the same, I don't think there were a lot of Republicans going, wait a minute, you can't be signing executive orders. But when Obama does it, they're furious. Let's see, quote, "This particular assertion of unilateral executive power occurred in the immigration context, but if the federal government's arguments are accepted, there is nothing stopping this executive or future executives from invoking resource constraints to declare conduct lawful in other areas, such as environmental, tax, criminal, campaign finance, and civil rights laws," unquote, Texas stated in its brief to the court. now, obviously, look, I'm not an attorney, nor am I a constitutional scholar. But that sounds like a weak argument to me, because, this is something where, an executive order from the president on immigration has precedence, whereas, I don't know of any. I mean, to suggest that this will lead to executive orders on other things like, civil rights laws and campaign finance, that seems like a stretch to me. But I am biased on this issue, so I acknowledge that. Obama announced the new deportation relief program last November as part of a series of sweeping executive actions on immigration. The largest was a new policy called Deferred Action for Parents of Americans and Lawful Permanent Residents, or DAPA, to allow certain undocumented parents to remain in the country and work on a temporary basis. The president also announced an expansion of the existing Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA, which does the same for certain undocumented immigrants who came to the U.S. before they turned 16. Texas sued to challenge the constitutionality of the program last December, and shortly after, 25 states joined the lawsuit, which has kept the policies in limbos ever since. And by the way, this is something that I was using as an example to, people who say, well, there is no, the president is, you'll hear this a lot on conservative talk radio. Oh, this is a lawless president. He thinks he can just sign executive orders and it's all illegal and this and that. And well, again, of course, it's all partisan hackery, because when Republican presidents do this, Republicans don't get upset. But putting that aside, it seems to me that the checks and balances that we have in our system constitutionally do work, apparently, because if the executive branch does something that, say, the legislative branch doesn't agree with, they can take it to the judicial branch. So in other words, if the president does something Congress doesn't like, they can say, hey, Supreme Court, we need you to look at this. I mean, that's obviously a hypersimplification, but that's basically how it works. So, it seems strange to me to, when I hear on the one hand people arguing that Obama is just lawless with this executive order and this is illegal and whatnot, but at the same time, it's being challenged as it seems like it should be in theory. I mean, I'd like to see it just, again, I'm not interested in deporting people, so I do have a bias here. Like I said, I acknowledge that, but it seems to me, how do you make both arguments? How do you in the same breath say that this executive order is by itself, by its nature, lawless, and yet it's also being taken through the series of checks and balances that our Constitution mandates it must go through? So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where this all ends up. There is more to this article. I know we're running out of time, but let's see. Calling Obama's policies a sweeping and unprecedented assertion of executive authority. I think that's a bit of an exaggeration. Texas repeated many of the arguments it has presented in lower courts, among them that these initiatives cause Texas substantial harm, that the program constitutes agency action and is thus perfectly reviewable by federal courts, and that Obama lacks substantive authority to enact it on his own. Texas said, quote, in reality, of course, DAPA is a crucial change in the nation's immigration law and policy, and that is precisely why it could be created only by Congress rather than unilaterally imposed by the executive, unquote. By the way, too, just an observation here. None of this, I mean, unless I've really misunderstood something here, and I have yet to see it, by the way. I have yet to notice it pop up in any of the verbiage that the state of Texas is using. But none of this gives undocumented immigrants citizenship. It's merely allowing people to stay under certain conditions. It's not the same thing as, you hear, you'll hear conservatives often use the term amnesty. And of course, they've taken that term and twisted it into something that it's not. Amnesty would be saying, like what Reagan did, everyone's conservative hero, Saint Reagan, when he, and by the way, he did go through Congress, but then he changed the law that he got passed through Congress via executive order because there were parts of it that had to be changed after Congress passed what they did. Same thing happened, by the way, during the George H.W. Bush administration. But none of this gives anyone citizenship. So what is the issue with allowing people to stay? Because here, look, I heard a conservative, and by the way, I was actually surprised to hear him say this. Michael Savage, who's a far-right conservative talk show host, who's very entertaining. I don't agree with him on much of anything, but I occasionally catch him on the radio, and he was saying that, he thinks as far as deporting people, go after criminals, go after the troublemakers, but leave the families alone. Leave the people who are not hurting anybody alone. It's ridiculous to try to lump everybody, put everybody in the same boat and say you all got to go. Focus on taking out the trash, I think is how he put it, but leave everybody else alone. So, and I was surprised to hear that from him. But anyway, all right.